What's going on YouTube? It's Teej, back again with another video, and still on the road, so I do apologize. Again, not on my green screen, so I am blocking my great picture of Chris Olave here, but nonetheless, we're here to talk about the New Orleans Saints in our Fix the Franchise series. A really interesting team to talk about, and I will apologize. This is probably going to be one of the more frustrating videos to watch, because this team, more than any other we've talked about so far, is in the meanest, like, wait-and-see kind of, stance and point in their offseason right now. So let's go ahead and start talking about it. 7-10 record last year, a little disappointing. I thought this team could win the division. I was really high on the Saints with Jameis or Andy Dalton, but more so with Jameis. I was really excited to see what he would look like. Michael Thomas injury, obviously unfortunate, but hey, Chris Olave, you got a hit right there. And I think especially now that you have a first round pick, which they have 8 picks now, they are now picking at 29 in the first round. I think it's a great spot to add either edge, interior defensive line, or wide receiver, which stand out as 3 areas I think they could get great value in this draft, but also could get better in the roster. And then you get to the problem here, and why this video is probably going to be pretty boring, especially for Saints fans, and I'm really, really sorry for that. Negative $57.31 million. Dead last on the cap. And I mean, hey, Mickey Loomis, kind of jumping ahead of my final notes here. The dude has done it year over year. He's got his work cut out for him this year. I don't know how you get yourself out of this one. Specifically, if you make a move for a Derek Carr. Like, if they were to draft a Tanner McKee in the second round or something like that, okay, yeah, sure. Getting a rookie quarterback contract as the guy you're starting, sure. Now I can see how you're going to get out of it. But if you're going to go add a Derek Carr in his contract, like, how are you going to overcome that deficit? I have no idea. So let's start talking about free agency. And again, I do apologize because this is not my best work, but this team is just in hell when it comes to cap situations. I like David Onyemata. He's had some up and down years. A lot of times, though, he'll follow up a down year with a pretty solid season. So I'd like to see them bring him back. And he is kind of that run stopper in the middle of the defense that, Cam Jordan's pretty good against the run too, but he would specifically, if they drafted like a Kalijah Kancey at 29 or a Tua Pelotu on day 2, I think having a David Onyemata there that frees up that pass rushing specialist on the inside. So I'd like to see him stay, but again, I ask the question, how the hell are you going to do that? So I don't know. You could trade Jameis and free up the cap money there, but then it's like, if you trade Jameis, who's your backup? And then also like Jameis could potentially start next year for all we know. Like that could logistically be their most feasible way of getting a cheap starting quarterback, because what if they don't get Carr? What if he goes to New York? And what if they don't like one of those second round quarterbacks, Hooker or McKee? Are you bundling 40 and 29 to move up to try to draft Anthony Richardson? Maybe, but I don't know. That's tough. So trade Jameis, maybe free up the money there. But then again, even as a backup, I think Jameis brings value. He may have a pretty big cap hit for a backup, but you never know when you're going to need it, right? Like, hey, you just had to lean on Andy Dalton pretty heavily this year, and I think he played pretty darn good. I don't know what else they can do to restructure the contracts on the roster, because a ton of dudes are already making an absolute brick of money. And I'm going to put it up on the screen now over all this. Dude, look at Michael Thomas's cap hit next year. That describes where this team is at better than anything else. This man is about to make $60 million against the cap next year. That's insane. And I mean, that just speaks to where the Saints are right now, unfortunately. So, tough scene. I don't know what they do in free agency. Derek Carr is like the only thing I think they could do. Maybe bring back David Onyemata, but especially if you get Carr, I just do not know how you're going to do that. Anyways, let's move on to the draft. So at 29, again, BPA, D-line, wide receiver, I think make a lot of sense, depending on the board. Like a Jackson Smith and Jigba to play that slot, I'm here for it. But that being said, like Rashid Shaheed, that dude feels like he goes for 40, 50 yards every time he touches the ball. So I'm kind of interested in him getting like a full-time role. And Chris Olave, big hit there. And hey, Michael Thomas is making a brick load of money. You got to find a way to maximize that value. Hopefully he can stay healthy this year. So D-line also makes a lot of sense. Kalijah Kancey. Also, this edge class is insanely loaded. So whether it's a Felix Anudike-Uzomah, a B.J. Ojulari, a Derek Hall, a Will McDonald, I think there's going to be guys there that you take a shot on. Andre Carter II. Plenty of dudes you can pick from there from the edge group. Some names from the interior defensive line group as well. If you miss out on David Onyemata, maybe a Siaki Ika makes sense there at 29. So I think they have a lot of different options, a lot of different routes you want to go down at 29. I'd almost go wide receiver if there's someone there they like, Downs, JSN, Tank Dell, someone like that, because the defensive line depth, I think, will last, specifically on the edge. The interior group, maybe not so much, but edge rushers, I think you'll be able to add somebody there in the second or even in the third round and get some good production right away. So then I have a couple different hypotheticals of what I want to do next. So if they get Derek Carr, go into the second round, the opposite of what you took in the first. If you took wide receiver at 29, at 40, draft the best edge or interior defensive lineman available. That's what I would do. Or if you took D-line at 29, try to find the best receiver available at 40. Again, some of the names I've already listed, Josh Downs, Tank Dell, they very well may be there at 40. Maybe even Jay Ascent. So that's the way I would go with it. If you don't get Derek Carr, you could start Jameis, but, battled a ton of injuries. Obviously, he's an up and down player as is. He is just a roller coaster of an experience. I like Tanner McKee a ton. I just did a reaction yesterday to Matt Miller's latest mock. He had Hendon Hooker in the second round, not McKee. I got McKee as my QB5, Hooker then at 6. So there's not a huge difference, but I don't know, with the injury history and Hooker being 25, I just don't know how much upside. Maybe I think he could come into an offense and be a facilitator, be a floor general of sorts. And for a team that has a really good wide receiver core when healthy, that might be enough. That might be good enough. Because also, the name I haven't mentioned yet might be the best player on the roster, and Alvin Kamara. So that dude's a freak. So maybe Hooker's enough to get the most out of those guys. He could just be a facilitator. To me, Tanner McKee, though, Michael Wilson's the only guy on that offense that to me is NFL caliber dude, and he played 26 games in 5 years. So, yeah, not enough. And the offensive line was bad. The other receivers outside of Wilson are just not very good. The run game was not great. David Shaw and his tenure just felt like him as a head coach, but also the offense was just stale. So I think everything about McKee's situation was just terrible, basically, at Stanford. So I think at the NFL level, especially like a Saints offensive line, that's pretty solid. A great running back. Really good receivers when they're healthy. I know it's not Sean Payton, but I think Dennis Allen's a solid coach. I think, I'm not really crazy about retread hires, but I think Dennis Allen earned this shot. And I think last year, even with the 7-10 record, the defense still played well. I'm still optimistic about Dennis Allen. And Pete Carmichael was, under Sean Payton as the OC for basically his entire tenure in New Orleans. So I still feel comfortable with him being the OC, working with a rookie quarterback coming in the second round. So I think if you miss out on Carr, Tanner McKee's your guy there at 40. Now, I know he's a guy that not a lot of other people like, but also, when you read my comment section, everybody likes C.J. Stroud, everybody likes Bryce Young, everyone hates everybody else. Maybe some people like Anthony Richardson. That's about it. I'm coming at this from, I think, a little bit more of a draft standpoint, what are Daniel Jeremiah, what are they hearing from scouts? How do scouts feel about these guys? So that's kind of my focus here. I think Tanner McKee, with the situation around him, he still has a good arm, really accurate. I mean, he's up there with Stroud and Young for one of the most accurate passers in this class. And that may shock people because they may not watch a whole lot of Stanford games. West Coast can be tough. They play late, whatever. But you give him the right situation and unlock that talent, I think he could be a guy where, the process for Drew Lock was sound. The Denver Broncos drafted him at 40. I think that process was sound. He just wasn't great, and I think the situation wasn't ready for carrying a quarterback. I think if McKee's the pick here at 40, that process is sound, and also I think he would be stepping into such a better situation that you would actually see his talent fully put on display. So I'm big on Tanner McKee, and I'm really trying to sell that here for 40. But if they get Derek Carr, then don't worry about it, and just go draft D-line or wide receiver. So if you're a Saints fan specifically, let me know what you think you're going to do at quarterback, because I am fascinated. And if you have watched Tanner McKee, let me know your thoughts on McKee, because I'm obviously a big fan of him as a second-round type of gamble, little roll of the dice there. And then the rest of the way, just try to patch up what holes there are. I'd love to see them add another corner. I know Paulson Adebo's been kind of up and down, but I think they could probably get better there. Also, Lattimore misses time every year, so probably good to have that third corner who can play on the outside as is. Depending on what happens, linebacker, Demario Davis is coming back, all that sort of stuff. Depth there would be good. Safety depth, everything we've basically talked about, they could get a little bit deeper at. Also, tight end. This is a really good tight end class. So the rest of the draft, I'd like to see them add depth, maybe another, a defensive line, corner, safety line, all that stuff we already talked about. I think legitimately they could draft a starting tight end in the third or something like that. So that would be a really interesting ad, whether it's a Tucker Kraft or Sam Laporta. I think that's, we haven't really seen a dominant Saints tight end in some time now. So I think that would be a worthwhile addition to the offense. And I think that's a part of the offense that can actually be improved and maybe open it up a little bit. So let me see them add a tight end and then just kind of patch up and add some depth the rest of the way. And then ultimately, final notes here. Again, Mickey Loomis has God's work put out in front of him. I legitimately don't know how he's going to do it. But I feel like I've been saying that for 5 years now. So, in Mickey Loomis, Saints fans trust. So, we'll see. But, man, if you restructure more... again, we're talking about Michael Thomas making $60 million against the cap next year. You got to be careful of those restructures because they will come back to roost. And if it's not this year... when you're negative 57 against the cap, I don't want to know what next offseason looks like. So, they'll figure it out. Loomis will. That or they're going to go full rebuild. They're going to either figure it out or they're going to go complete rebuild, look to shift, pieces, out of New Orleans and roll with the rookie quarterback. But, kind of off of that, this comes down to who the quarterback is. If they get Jameis Winston and he somehow plays 17 games of, high variance Jameis, this team's scary. But the problem with Jameis is, You get the high-end stuff and you get the bad stuff the next week. So if it's Jameis, it's going to be an up-and-down team. If it's Derek Carr, I'm interested. But again, I don't know how that works cap-wise. I just genuinely have no idea. Unless Derek Carr is like, hey, I just want to leave Vegas so bad, I will play for like $2 million this year. I just cannot see how that happens. And then a rookie quarterback. If McKee hits and the situation is good enough around him, maybe there's something to be worked out there. But maybe not, because he is a second-round quarterback. You're taking him at 40, and that's a position where the good guys go early. So it's tough. And again, I'm sorry, Saints fans. This is probably not the video you were looking forward to, and I feel like I've been such a Debbie Downer throughout it. But yeah, I mean, the cap and that negative $57 million against it, that it just puts you in such a tough spot. You are between a rock and a hard place, no doubt about it. But if you are a Saints fan, let me know what you think Mickey Lewis is going to do to get himself out of this hole. And of course, the biggest question, whether you're a Saints fan or just an NFL fan, want to talk about New Orleans, who do you think the quarterback is? Do you think it's Derek Carr? I'm kind of leaning that he goes to New York right now, and then they're going to have to go with Jameis or a rookie quarterback. So let me hear your thoughts and your predictions for who the Saints quarterback is going to be in 2023, 2024. But hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. If you're out here and want to see more football content, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, leave your comments down below with your thoughts on the New Orleans Saints. But that's going to do it for me. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.